Thank you. Actually, before we even get started, I was actually just reading the board outside, what's next for people, and it was great because you saw like there's places, Buenos Aires and things like that, the desire to learn, the mind, balance, and the heart. And when you look at a board like that, they all have one thing in common. You. They have people. People are at the center. And for a number of years, I mean, I'm not that old, but, you know, when I grew up, you had to phone your friends, set a time when you actually wanted to, you know, hang out with them, and then actually show up. Weird. So we've kind of hit this kind of personal technological evolution where we know that tomorrow needs to be absolutely supported by a platform of technology and some sort of system. It doesn't have to be what it is today. We have the ability to change it, and as humans, we make a lot of things in our image. So what I'm going to walk you through today is some of the work that we're doing in this area to put the human first. It's challenging. You are very complex. But we don't have to rebuild a human. What we have to do is we have to support humanity. And I'd just like to walk you through some of the stuff that we've been doing. And as my head of emotional sciences like to say, always start with a baby or a pug, because then you'll believe everything I'm saying.
Much it hurts me.
Just want you to take a good look at this video.
It's over with her. I want to believe it's true.
So, what was that baby feeling? Big question. Tons of emotion. It's estimated that right now, everybody in this room is processing about 11 million bits per second of information. Okay? That's all your sensory information coming in. You've got sights, you got sounds, you got random people next to you who you've never met before. And yet, you're filtering that down to 40 bits per second to focus on exactly what I'm saying. To think about and put into your rational brain what's going on. Now, to answer this question, you have to go, well, what role do emotions play in our lives? And when you start to think about that, it, like I said, starts to get complex. But like any sort of intelligence problem, you kind of have three factors. You have an environment, you have a person, and you have an end goal. And so you have to start looking at places you can create environment, put people in them, towards an end goal. So we started in the media space, and we wanted to understand how we could teach a machine to read body language. And I teamed up with a number of psychologists, data scientists, anthropologists, random people who love this kind of work, just to throw some ideas together and figure out what we could do. And that was 3 years ago, and we developed something like this. So what you're looking here is the baby is having their face tracked. We've actually slowed down the graphs a little bit, but from left to right, we've got happy, surprised, puzzled, disgusted, afraid, and sad. We're complex. What's great about this is it actually starts to demonstrate what emotions do, though. And emotions are really that filter. They're that filter so that we can concentrate on what we feel is important in our lives in order to achieve our end goals. Now, as we grow as a society, we have a really big question ahead of us. That big question is, how do we handle population? How do we handle climate? These are things that are going to be far more complex than individual problems that we've had to solve in the past. Hence why we need a system to help us break down and filter out the stuff that is noise, okay? So what we did is we needed a test bed. So we approached the BBC, and at the BBC we spent 2 years tracking 40,000 people through dramatic and BBC Earth content and documentary content and fun live entertainment. And basically what we did is we tracked them, their reaction to promos, with the idea of the measure of appreciation. Do you like or dislike a video? And then we would track it into ratings and sales data to understand what was going on. Now, we found some interesting things when we started to correlate them, but again, emotional data is complex, so we had to actually invent new ways to look at data so that we could simplify it into single numbers. So what you're seeing here is actually a very simple statistical correlation that is a summary of about 500 million data points. What's interesting here is you've got the emotions at the top. We've got happiness, surprise, puzzlement, disgust, fear, sadness. And we've got attention, so are they actually even looking at the screen? And at the end, you've got appreciation. And it's broken down on the side by UK, US, Australia, and then the total. Now, we found very slight correlation with summarized metrics of puzzlement to drive appreciation of a drama in the UK, US, and Australia. And that was consistent throughout. Now, what was interesting, though, and I think it's visualized better on this slide, what was interesting, though, is that in the UK, that's all that was needed to drive that appreciation. So British dramas are notorious. Clearly, I'm not from here, but I'm not from America either. In the States, happiness was actually a larger driver over puzzlement. Still had to have the classic double puzzlement curve that we see, but we also had to have large drivers of happiness and surprise. And then in Australia, we get into a little bit more of a different element, with fear being a big driver over, say, disgust. So this kind of drives the larger question, the topic of conversation for us, around this whole artificial intelligence thing. I mean, what does it even mean? If our computer systems, and if we actually and I'm not going to sit here and profess to even know the ins and outs of artificial intelligence. I think we're all just still scraping the surface. There's some really good work being done by a lot of companies in this area. But if we take a step back and say, right, tomorrow we have to deal with some pretty complex issues. We've been able to scale the noise in our world, but we're going to have to put a filtering mechanism in place so we can concentrate on things. Then do we continue to build our systems in the image of logic? Or if we could teach a machine to recognize emotion, can we build systems in the image of empathy? And that, I think, is the idea we're sharing. Thank you.